Elizabeth Warren, in the debate tonight, asked Delaney probably the best question that could be asked to Delaney, dealing with the question of essentially running in the race itself, meaning what are you putting forth and so forth, meaning what do you want to be from the standpoint of a Democrat. Why on earth go through the trouble of getting involved in a Democratic presidential primary only to tell people what you can't do? I love it, I love it, I love it. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. I'm doing snapshots of the debate. There are various parts that I love in this debate. And in many parts that I like are exchanges that Sanders and Warren end up having with some of the other corporatists that are on stage. Meaning, in their defense of either Medicare for All or even on college loan stuff, essentially it was a back and forth that you found, and those were some of the most interesting within the context of the debate. And so I'm going to go through and show those. Now, some of those are longer exchanges where they were able to go back and forth. But ultimately, this debate really, do you agree with Sanders? Yes or no? Framed in a way of, hey, there's a problem with this plan that Sanders is putting out, right? Seeing it for you. Nevertheless, Delaney, whose own campaign staff is trying to get him to drop out of the race. Seriously, his own campaign staff was leaking information to the press showing that Delaney was essentially paying $19 million of his own money and having got like about 1% of the polls. Gravel has started a hashtag drop out Delaney because if Delaney drops out, Gravel will be able to get on the debate stage. That guy, whose own staff is trying to get him to drop out the race, is the most vocal opponent of what we can't do. And Elizabeth Warren has the best question in the world for one Delaney.
I get it. There is a lot at stake and people are scared. But we can't choose a candidate we don't believe in just because we're too scared to do anything else. And we can't ask other people to vote for a candidate we don't believe in. Democrats win when we figure out what is right and we get out there and fight for it.
I think Democrats win when we run on real solutions, not impossible promises. When we run on things that are workable, not fairy tale economics.
This loser has been saying that all night, meaning, oh, it's a fairy tale. Oh, it's impractical. These are essentially Republican talking points in the Democratic Party that this guy is using to try to attack plans within the context of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party literally won the House of Representatives, with many of the candidates pushing for things like Medicare for all, or at the very least, universal health care in many respects. That's how they won the House. Sanders is number 2 in the polling. Elizabeth Warren is number 3 in the polling. And Kamala Harris is number 4 in the polling. 2, 3, and 4 are at the very least giving voice to Medicare for all. Kamala Harris' plan is not Medicare for all. It's Medicare Advantage, to step away from privatization. But at the very least, at one point, she had sense enough to use the term. You are at 1% of the polls, meaning the overwhelming majority of the Democratic Party is saying, yes, this is something we want. This is the direction we want to go in. And you are literally in that debate using your own money to tell people we can't do this. How sad of a person you have to be. Why can't you just take your millions? I don't understand why millionaires don't take their money and just go away and enjoy their money. You want to spend that money to get into the political process, to tell the rest of the Democratic Party that what they want, Medicare for all, single payer, everybody in the country covered. Medicare not for profit, but for actual health care for the individuals in the process. And you want to get into the process spending your own money to say that's impossible. The thing is, any plan that you put up, meaning any plan that Sanders or whatever the president wants, is going to get tweaked, pushed, molded, and it's not going to be the original plan that you start off with. What is the point in starting off with something watered down? Why are you starting off on the 50-yard line of the opposition? It is good, and it says something about the Democratic Party, at the very least, the voting public that's in the primary, that you are in 1%, and that after this debate, we will never hear from you again in life. You will vanish from our public viewing. The universe will be that much brighter.
Look at the story of Detroit, this amazing city that we're in. This city is turning around because the government and the private sector are working well together.
When he said this, I turned to my wife and I said, isn't Detroit under an emergency manager? I could be wrong in this, but at one point Detroit had a Republican governor, and that governor ran roughshod over the local governments within Detroit and appointed an emergency manager where was running the city, running roughshod over the government itself. I could be wrong on this. Fact check me on this. But if that's what he's talking about, that's a Democrat that's rah-rahing this. But let's keep going. I could be wrong on this. And maybe my memory of this is going back for something that was in the past. So don't hold me to that one.
That has to be our model going forward.
You know, I don't understand why anybody goes to all the trouble of running for president of the United States just to talk about what we really can't do and shouldn't fight for.
Look at his face! Look at his face! Look at his face! Oh, she pierced him! She's like... Love that. God, I love that. That is something that I think that clearly that was a zinger that she was holding in for this moment. He just walked right into it. Oh, I love that. I love that. Why do you spend $19 million of your money? The only way that would have been better is she would have said, Delaney is spending $19 million of his money, and his own campaign staff is trying to get him to drop out the race. And he is literally spending his own money to get into this race to tell you what you can't do. That's the only thing that would have made that better. That zinger that your own staff wants you to drop out. Because at that point, anything else that Delaney says is couched within the knowledge now that the rest of the public has, that his own campaign staff wants him to drop out the race. Now, I'm a bit of an asshole when I'm thinking of ways to politically undermine my opponents. And so maybe she thought better to not do that. But I don't like Delaney. And so it wouldn't have bothered me one iota for that knife to be drawn. However, I love that zinger. I love that zinger. I love that zinger. I love that zinger. And I love his facial expression after she hits him with that. She's like, for the life of me, and look at her face. For the life of me, I don't understand why somebody would go through all the trouble of getting into a presidential election to tell you what you can't do, to explain to you what is not possible. Why are you here? Why are you here? I love the question. I love the question. I love his face after she asked him. Say it again.
Because the government and the private sector are working well together. That has to be our model going forward.
You know, I don't understand why anybody goes to all the trouble of running for president of the United States just to talk about what we really can't do and shouldn't fight for.
And then I love the part, and what we can't and what we shouldn't fight for. Essentially calling him spineless. God, I love it. And I love his face. His face is perfect. His face is perfect. That's the perfect face. When you just got hit by something like that, that's the face. That's the face you give. It's like, put it in the dictionary. When somebody says, why are you here? Why are you taking up space on this debate stage? Gravel could have been standing there. Why are you here? Why are you here? You're literally burning through your own. You have so much money. You have so much money that you are literally burning through your own money, throwing it away, burning that shit on the lawn. Why? To be on the debate stage, to tell people that no, you can't have nice things, that big things are impossible, that putting a man on the moon is in the past. This notion of passing a Social Security, Medicare, can't be done. Can't be done. We can't build a highway system. We can't do that. We can't free the slaves. We can't pass civil rights legislation. We can't do big things. And he's burning through his own money to come and tell you that. That's astonishing. You know, typically you have millionaires on television being paid by billionaires to tell you can't have nice things. And that you should continue to support candidates that will continue to put money in millionaires and billionaires' pockets, as opposed to supporting your own interests. In this case, you have a millionaire directly looking you in the face and even using his own money to tell you you can't have nice things. That's astonishing. I love it. He's at like point nothing in the polls. And he's still here bitching at Warren and Sanders. Look at his face. I love his face.
Our biggest problem in Washington is corruption. It is giant corporations that have taken our government and that are holding it by the throat. And we need to have the courage to fight back against that. And until we're ready to do that, it's just more of the same. Well, I'm ready to get in this fight. I'm ready to win this fight.
Thank you, Senator.
I like the imagery there, man. Giant corporations that has the government of the United States by the throat. Look, Warren is squishy as a political figure. The only thing that I know of Warren is that she hates bankers. That's, I think if she could get the opportunity to, hit a banker in the knees and nobody would sue her or anything like that, I think she would do so. And as president of the United States, who knows what she would do in that regard. So from a domestic sense, I don't necessarily doubt where she's coming from. My issue with her is that she is a squishy political actor. When it came down to it, she wasn't willing to support Sanders. She wasn't willing to support Standing Rock. And that's even after calling herself a Native American for God knows how long. So, I have qualms when I don't necessarily know the quantity of the individual that is being embroiled in the process. Especially when I already have a real thing, and it seems like this other squishy figure is taking votes away from my real thing. And I know I'm using the term taking votes, but I'm only using a term in the sense that Sanders was there first. And she is a bad copy. However, she was a professor. And as such, she explains policy extraordinarily well. And in the debate, there were multiple occasions where she was able to succinctly explain policy that Sanders was pushing, by the way, if that makes sense. Like, her policy and Sanders are not exactly the same. But in broad snapshots, when you're getting 15 seconds in order to kind of make your point, it's general terms. I want to do this, and this. She does it succinctly. Bam. It's awesome. Sanders comes in and gives an explanation of what's going on. But in many respects, it was like they were piggybacking off of each other in some respects. Only because, again, they were being attacked from the right-wingers that were in the group. This was an odd debate. I mean, it was almost like you fused two people together because the two people, for the most part, were defending similar ideas, whereas the other people were attacking those ideas. And so it wasn't so much specific policy in as much as ideas that they were defending versus attacking. I hope that makes sense. This is almost like a philosophical basis that they were either defending or attacking. And this has to do with whether people should have healthcare, whether healthcare should be something that is up for competition, meaning, am I getting profit off of your failings? And is that, can we have a moral argument in this? Not just a moral argument, but also an economic argument of saying we can cut costs. These guys are making profits off of us. And that's unnecessary, meaning insurance companies are unnecessary to the process. They are leeches in our system. They leech out tons of money, and their business model in and of itself is literally to deny care. Is that what we really want? Where it's always this competition between their profits versus your ability to get adequate health care. Do you realize when I was in Egypt, I was able to get this medication, Lyrica. There's another one, gabapentin. Lyrica is kind of like a pre-form of gabapentin. I was able to get boatloads of the stuff because you could just buy it over the counter. And in buying it over the counter, it was dirt cheap. I get back to the United States, and my insurance company doesn't even allow me to get Lyrica, even though that would literally be the best thing in this particular situation. But they don't allow you to get it because it's too expensive. Our healthcare system is dysfunctional. It is a profit-based system where they have leached off of us. We can be rugged individuals, but let's be rugged individuals together and collectively make the choice that we don't necessarily need a healthcare system that is for profit. We don't need a healthcare system for profit. We can have healthcare for the sake of healthcare. That's a novel idea. How about doing something right for the first time? We can come together and say, yes, we can have a healthcare system where we expand Medicare for all, regardless of who you are. You can be the poorest person on the planet. And congratulations, we've evolved to such a degree as a society where healthcare is your birthright. Congratulations. We can be that society. That's not magic. That's not radical. That's an issue of policy. It is an issue of policy. And it's not something that is so wildly expensive. The fact of the matter is, it is cheaper than how we go about our healthcare now, not to mention massively less complicated. The world can be a different place. The world can be a different place. Those things are acts of will and policy. On that stage tonight, you saw Medicare for All being argued into the public. I want to put something firmly in your mind in this. Back in 2008, when Obama was running for office, the radical idea was the public option. Do you remember this? And in that radical idea being the public option, the moment that Obama got into office, it was like, public what? Public who? Who? Public who? They got rid of that so fast. And they came up with Obamacare, where they kept saying is universal coverage, even though 20 or 30 million people still did not have health care. The woman who rolled that out, what's his name? Sibylis, I think is her name. And who screwed it up royally, rolling out the healthcare system where they couldn't get the website or something correct. That woman is now on the board of a new healthcare system that is going to work with kind of like Medicare Advantage, meaning board of a private healthcare system. CNN is quoting that woman as saying Kamala Harris's Medicare for All plan is excellent. Yeah, it's excellent because it's going to put a ton of money in her pocket. She's going to profit directly from that plan that Kamala Harris is advocating for. Do you think that CNN is going to tell their audience that? No, CNN is not. CNN is not. We can do better. It's a thing of will and choice. In 2008, public option taken off the table. We are literally arguing on a debate stage as a central position in this conversation, Medicare for All. That's astonishing sea change. That sea change isn't entirely Bernie Sanders. I guess my point is, if you're going to have somebody to bring it to fruition, isn't the guy to bring it to fruition the guy who essentially started it and set the world to which you find yourself? My answer to that, of course, is yes. We're living in a world of Sanders. I would love for Elizabeth Warren to be Bernie Sanders' vice president. Love for it to take place. Tulsi as Secretary of State. But that's just me. I could be wrong. I like the way she explains it. Meaning, as an attack dog, or as Sanders to, how can I say this? It's like they're different dimensions of sorts. The arguments are so similar, even though the arguments are slightly different. But CNN is never going to get into the nuance where you can find the difference between the two. So from the standpoint of the objective observer who's just looking at it, if you're not fully engaged in the political thing, you would think these two people are arguing the same thing. Well, they're not arguing the exact same thing. They're just arguing the principle of a thing. But CNN is never going to be good enough to actually get into the meat of it to figure out the difference between those things. So ultimately, you just have corporatists who are arguing with the lefties on things like Medicare for All or expanding college. It's a fascinating debate, even though CNN just absolutely sucks in the way that they frame questions and the way that they create just conflict. I mean, it's, hey, he said this, he said you sucked. Did he? How dare he? Well, he said you sucked also. I mean, the debate was, he said, she said in many respects, and in other respects, they would frame questions in ways to give it the worst spin and contort it where it doesn't really give you the most accurate perspective of what they're talking about. If I say Medicare for All is going to kick you 180 million people off their insurance plans, and it's like, wow, it's going to do that. When the more honest thing is, Medicare for All ensures that everybody in the country is covered. The way you say that makes a difference. If you're framing that as 180 million people are losing their insurance, it's like, well, kind of. I mean, but that's kind of like saying if you had 60 million people, kids who were going to school, and the federal government comes along and says, we're going to implement mass education where everybody's kid can go to school. Jake Tapper comes in and says he's trying to get rid of 70 million kids from their schools. Well, of course, that would be a nonsense perspective. I mean, we have public education. We can see the public education allows everybody to go to school. So even though there might have been 70 million people who were going to a private school at one point, I mean, for the most part, the public education doesn't stop them from going to their schools. I guess if that makes sense. It's not really getting rid of people's insurance. It is, for the most part, those people are not going to have their current insurance plan, but their current insurance plan changes constantly. My current insurance plan changed every year because the job was looking for the most cheapest plan that they could find, or the cheapest plan that they can find. They will have health care in perpetuity, and it will be comprehensive. And everything is included within their health care. And they are not paying bills at point of service. Right now, you're paying a tax every time you go for a copay. When I have to go and get a prescription, I have to pay a copay just for the cost of just seeing my doctor. When my wife goes to the doctor or to the emergency room, she has to pay a copay. That's a tax. And it's worse than that. Because at a certain point, she says, I'm not going to the doctor anymore because I don't want to pay the copay. Or I don't want to get this test because I don't want them to charge me. Having insurance is not the end-all, be-all. And there was a case where Warren she kind of made this point too. Like, look, having health insurance is not the end-all, be-all. My mom had health insurance. I had health insurance. But it didn't stop it when we were seeing nephrologists, primary care doctor, going for this particular test, that test. It eats you alive. It eats you alive. So, yes, we're in a different world. And in this respects, whatever you want to think of Sanders, and I know I have some people on this channel who are kind of hard on Mr. Bernie Sanders, at the very least admit that we are in a different world, in a different space from the arguments to which we are having. Mainstream media is trying to ding this. They're trying to ding it. But the fact that they're trying to ding it means at the very least it's there and it's up for the debate. Thanks all.